Okay, so today we're going to be talking about solving quadratic equations by graphing. Our essential question today is, how do you find the roots of a quadratic equation from a graph? So to start off talking about our vocabulary, we first have quadratic equation is a second degree equation in the format y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. A, b, and c are just numbers that are going to be in our equation. The graphs are always going to be a parabola, which is a U shape, and every parabola has a line of symmetry. We're also going to be looking at the vertex. These are going to be the maximum or minimum point of the graph. We're going to be looking at using the vertex formula, negative b over 2a, to find our vertex from an equation. And to find our roots, that's where our graph crosses the x-axis. They're also called the x-intercepts, solutions, or zeros. Those all mean looking for the roots. So sometimes it might be that we have a double root. A double root is where the vertex of a quadratic function lies on the x-axis. So it kind of just touches the x-axis and goes back down or goes back up. So looking down at the different types of solutions we can have our U-shaped parabola cross the x-axis twice and have two solutions. It could go down and just touch the x-axis once, going down or going up. Those are our double roots that we talked about, where it touches the axis and goes down. Or we could have no real number solution where our parabola never crosses the x-axis. So to be able to do this, our first step is going to be to write in standard form. So if our equation is not in this format, we're going to put it in that format first. Then we're going to type our equation into the graphing calculator, or you can plug numbers in for x by hand. And then we're going to graph it and identify the roots where it crosses the x-axis. So starting in with our first example, we've got y equals x squared minus 4. So to start off, we're just going to be using the vertex formula to find our vertex, and then we'll graph it and find our roots. So our vertex formula is negative b over 2a. Before we plug in, we need to actually identify the b and the a. So our b value is supposed to be that middle term. So if we're talking about ax squared plus bx plus c is our standard form, we're looking for the number that is attached to the x. We don't have one of those in this equation. There is no middle term, so that means that our b value was 0. And then our a value is that coefficient that's on x, so we're looking for this number. Since there's not one written, our a value was 1. So to find our vertex, we're going to plug in negative b over 2a, and 0 divided by anything equals 0. So that is our x-coordinate for our vertex. Now we're just going to plug that 0 in to find our y-coordinate. So I've got y is equal to that x value we just found, plugged in for x. And then we're just going to simplify, and 0 minus 4 gives me negative 4. So that's our y, and this is our x. So our ordered pair for our vertex would be 0 for our x value and negative 4 for our y value. So that's how we find the vertex if we're not given the graph. Now we're going to take a look at what the graph looks like. So I'm going to use Desmos for this. You can use the handheld calculator or Desmos. So we're going to go ahead and plug in our equation. Y equals x squared minus 4. And looking at that equation, we have two places where it crosses the x-axis once we have it graphed. So going back to our examples, I don't expect you guys to draw these in. I'm just input the pictures from Desmos so you guys can see it without toggling back and forth. So it crosses here and here on the x-axis. Those 2 points are going to be our roots. So for our first example, our roots on the x-axis are at -2 and +2. If we wanted to write the ordered pairs for those, that's where on the y-axis it's at 0, so it would be -2, 0, and 2, 0. And then if we wanted to check our vertex, we said our vertex was supposed to be at 0, -4, and if we look at the picture of our graph, our vertex is at 0, -4, so our vertex was correct. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go to the next one. We're going to go ahead and make sure this is in standard form, and it is because we've got our squared, x, and constant on the same side. We're going to practice doing our vertex with this one as well. So our vertex is going to be at -b over 2a. We're going to find our b value first, which is that number attached to x. And our a value is going to be the number attached to x squared. Since it's a negative, we're going to say -1. We're going to go ahead and plug that in. -b divided by 2 times a. We would get -4 over -2, which gives us a +2 as our x value. So that's the x coordinate for our vertex, and we're going to go ahead and plug that in to find our y value. So we've got -2 squared plus 4 times 2 plus 5. Then we're just going to simplify from there. 2 times 2 gives me 4. 4 times 2 is 8. And just keep simplifying. So that would be our y value. So our ordered pair for our vertex would be at x value 2, y value 9. So that's our vertex. And then going back to going ahead and graphing that. For this one, we've got y equals -x squared plus 4x plus 5. And then we're going to graph that, and we'll go ahead and find our roots. So going back to our notes, we have roots on that one at -1 and +5. And if we wanted to write those as ordered pairs, those are our x values, so we'd have -1, 0, and 5, 0. So those are our roots. And then if we wanted to check to make sure our vertex is correct, we said that our vertex was supposed to be at 2, 9. And looking at our maximum point, if we go over to 2 up to 9, our vertex is correct. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go through those last two examples, plugging those into Desmos. So for our next one, we're going to make sure it's in standard form first. This one is not in standard form because we don't have our constant on the same side as the other terms. So to move that, we're just going to add 16 to both sides to get it in the correct standard form. So we'd have x squared minus 8x plus 16. And this is what we're going to type into our Desmos for that one. So we've got to make sure it's in standard form. If all of these aren't on the same side, then we've got to do the opposite to get them on the same side. So going back to Desmos, we're going to plug that one in, and we've got y is equal to x squared minus 8x and plus 16. Okay. So we've got our picture there, and looking back at our notes, crosses twice, or sorry, no, it just crosses once, so it just comes down and touches. So we've got a double root for this one, and our root is at 4, so our ordered pair for that would be 4, 0. And that's also going to be our vertex for that one, because that's our minimum point. And then last but not least, we're going to go ahead and look at our last problem. So again, we're just going to make sure that that's in standard form. We've got all of our terms on the same side, so it's already in standard form for us. We're going to go ahead and plug that one into the Desmos calculator. we've got y is equal to negative 2x squared minus x and minus 2. So when we plug that in, if you guys notice, it never crosses that x-axis. So going over to our picture in our notes, it never crosses that x-axis. So because it never crosses that x-axis, we're going to say that we have no real number solutions. Okay, make sure you've got all your notes copied down and go ahead and make sure that you've done your guided practice and the problems in the formative.